let's go ahead and get started. Recordings on. So I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on AO 2020-81 to establish a Port of Alaska Modernization Program and Design Advisory Board. Let's start with a roll call of Assembly members.
Ms. Allard. I see Ms. Allard on meeting list. And Mr. Constant?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Ms. Kennedy?
Here.
Ms. LaFrance?
Here.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Perez-Verdia? Mr. Weddleton? Ms. Zalatel? Might also see Ms. Zalatel on the list. Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Here.
And Mr. Rivera?
Present.
You have a quorum.
This is Allard. I'm here too.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Allard. All right. So as normal, if Assembly members want to get in the queue, please put yourself in the chat. If you can't access the chat, just text me and I will add you into the chat. We're going to go ahead and start off before we get to the heart of the work session regarding the advisory board. I'm going to turn it over to Sharon, I believe, to give us a quick update on the PCT.
Hello, I'm muted and I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see it? Can anyone see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Put together a few pictures for you to show you what we've got going. It'll just take a few minutes. I'll run through the whole thing, and then if you have questions about a particular slide, we'll come back to it. Sound good? Okay. We're pretty excited. This is going to work its way through the, oops, sorry, shoot. I lost my presenter information. All right, I'm back. We're going to work our way through the construction. And what you're seeing now is, probably about 6 weeks ago while we were driving piling, the temporary trestle, which is the this area is being worked on, and then the permanent trestle will be here, the platform here. The first 2 rows of the platform piles were installed in this picture with the platform in the foreground. Okay, next slide. This shows the trestle piles being cut off to elevation near the end of the trestle. The rebar being installed, rebar cage being installed inside of the piles in the foreground. That would be this. And then the store crown is set up. The store crown means big crane, and that's what it is. And it's setting up to drive a permanent pile. Next, we have 2 crew members standing. We want to show you how big this crane really is. And those are 2 crew members. So if you want to get an idea of how big that thing really is, it's kind of cool. Here, I like this picture the best. This guy, properly safety harnessed, he's got a concrete pump there, and he is putting concrete into the middle of one of these piling. It's kind of a cool shot. And next we have the precast pile caps set on the trestle. 2 rows of the platform piles we're only 2 rows short of the platform piles. The barge moored outboard here, it has all the precast deck panels that are going to go onto the project. And what they do, here's one that hasn't been picked up yet. They pick it up and they set it over the cages. And then what we'll be doing next is pouring concrete up to the top of this. And then next after that, we'll be we'll put the other pieces on. Kind of cool. This shows the precast pile caps, and they're set at what's hanging off the side here is cantilever supports for the petroleum and cement pipe rack. And you can see the cages all protruding up through the pile caps, ready to be all concrete poured all together. We call them closure pours. This shows, this is a precast mock-up that they did in the precast yard back in in Vancouver, BC, and they want to ensure that the rebar placement will not conflict between the precast pile cap and the deck panels. So this would be a pile cap, these would be deck panels, and then everything gets poured all together. 2 more slides only. This is one last platform pile to be completed for permanent piling, and this is the bubble curtain around the piling that is, as they start to drive it, they put air through the bottom of this thing, and it makes all these bubbles that supposedly keep the noise down for the belugas, which is what we want to do. This was yesterday, and ta-da, all the permanent piles are in. The last one was put in yesterday. So, questions?
Thank you. Let me just look at the
Chair,
queue.
Halsey, I'll jump in only to say, in addition to the cool construction photos, the questions, of course, I'm always asking Sharon and Jeff are, how are we doing on timing and budget? So maybe I'll ask them right now. How are we doing on timing and budget? Okay,
good question. Actually, we are right at this point exactly on schedule. So we're pretty happy about that. We've had, some delays for the belugas, but it was anticipated and planned for, and we're on schedule at this time. In terms of budget, we're still within our change order authority. We've had, the usual things that come up. The biggest change order we've had to make was the federal folks told us that we had to do some additional whale monitoring and an additional station. And so that was our largest change order. And it's something that we just have to do because we want to keep those federal regulators happy. Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I will say that we had 5% of the contract value authorized for change order authority when this was awarded. I think that, and we had 10% set aside in the budget, but only 5% was authorized for change order authority. Right now, we're projecting we might go over that 5% that's been authorized by 1% or 2% based on these changes and impacts from marine mammals and those types of things that are occurring. But more or less, like I said, it is on schedule to support what Sharon said. And the 2021 contract, I don't know if Bill or you're going to mention that, but that'll be up for approval on Tuesday's assembly meeting.
Yeah, and just to finish that story then, that's right. So we have sent the 2021 scope of work to the Assembly. It should be on the next meeting. You'll see that if you haven't yet caught up to that item, that the bids came in better than our engineer's estimate. So that is all good news. I think that's the top line summary, is that this is proceeding according to plan, and we're pretty happy. But we're happy to answer questions about that too. Otherwise, thanks for indulging us. We wanted to steal a few minutes to make sure the Assembly had pretty strong visibility into how things are actually going down at the port construction project today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to move us on just so we have enough time for the rest of our discussion. So I'm going to either turn it to either Mr. Falsey or Mr. Constant to lay the foundation for us about the discussion around the advisory board. And then after that, the remainder of our time will be a discussion with the port users to get their thoughts. So would one of you two like to kick us off?
Sure. This is Mr. Constant here. And I apologize if it gets loud. Jets are taking off of J-Bear. So what we're doing today is having a work session on an ordinance that creates a port user advisory group that will help to inform decision making as we move into the next stages of the construction of the port modernization. And so we've had lots of input. Dean, I'm not sure if he has prepared a version of this for review right now, but we have had some creative discussions back and forth between various groups. And we've, at this point, settled on the version that was introduced. There isn't a substitute version at this time. And with that, this is just a basic opportunity for a conversation about the item before we move it on Tuesday.
Thank you.
And
Would you like to add anything, Mr. Falsey?
Dean is ready with the AO.
Yeah,
Great,
just to
I'll
review
turn
the
to-
bidding, that this ordinance sort of fell out of our lived experience of the petroleum cement terminal, which we sort of got to the end and realized that the process was such that a lot of new voices had come in, and now we're just looking, we were all sort of looking backwards at how did we get to where we got, and that really caused a lot of sort of needless heartache, I think, as we were getting to the goal line in the petroleum cement terminal. So we want to do better this time around for the cargo piece, which is now the big unfinished business. Out of that port user group discussions from the PCT, we proposed the first version in January, but we were totally open as a policy matter to whatever works for everybody. So there were a lot of changes suggested by the port user group. There are, I think, 2 versions that were competing. Both of them within the space of possible for us. I will invite Steve Rebuffo, of course, who's the port director. I know that he had maybe some concerns that were brought, or some comments from the Port Commission. But I think this is largely in the what works for you is going to work for us. I think some version of this is fine from where we're sitting. As to the fine particulars, it's in the Assembly's hands. But Steve, if you have anything to add from the Port Commissioner, otherwise we can jump right into the everyone else can talk other than me portion of this meeting.
Sure. For the Assembly through the chair, at our Port Commission meeting on Wednesday, we brought this topic up so that the Port Commissioners would be aware that it was going on, and some interest was raised in possibly participating and filling one of the seats that's within the AO already that would make up the board, or recommending that one be added for a Port Commissioner. But I did see that Mr. Pulowski, who is our co-chair of the Port Commission, is also on the line. I believe they've somewhat backed off of that position after some internal conversations between the Port Commission meeting and today, where they may, they may let things go the way they are, but that makes it incumbent on the port staff to keep them abreast of everything that's going on, which I like to think we do a good job of now. So I don't think it was the issue that we had originally thought it was, but if Mr. Pulowski wants to correct me, he can go ahead and do so.
And Mr. Chair,
right, not
if there's no one else, we might go to Dean just for a quick review.
Yes, so before we go to Mr. Gates, actually, I'd like to, Mr. Slifka, you made a comment. I'd like you to read into the record, please.
Maybe you're on mute, Mr. Slifka?
Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped away for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, if you could just read your comment into the record, please.
Oh, yeah, certainly. The one point we wanted to just reference is that the contract you're going to see before you next Tuesday has a 10% change order authority. And as Jeff mentioned in his comments earlier, we're already at about 6% for the work we're doing this year. And so we just are putting that change order authority, asking for 10%, hoping that we won't need it. But as Sharon said, when you're in the water, things happen all the time. And so we just think it's prudent to ask for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gates, did you want to go ahead and share the AO?
Sure. Let me go ahead on screen. So I think now you can see the ordinance on screen, and I would just note that there's the sponsors who are co-chairs of the Enterprise and Utilities Oversight Committee, and it's prepared by Assembly Council. I'm not sure that's really right, because this was mostly written up by the port users group, so with some input from Mr. Fossey, myself, the chairs, and so forth. But I think a lot of credit goes to the port users group for the form that we stick. So anyways, we've got the whereas paragraphs just explaining the port and the PAMP and why we need an advisory board. And the reasons for it in the third, fifth whereas at line 26. It sort of lays out the foundation of why we think this is a good idea to have this advisory board. The there's no significant economic effects, although there's some staffing costs that would be absorbed, I believe, by the port in their budget to support the advisory board. So in section 1, we just identified this new advisory board in Title 4, which is our boards and commissions title of the municipal code, and just made this short and put the whole beef of this into Title 11, which is rather common. Now, Title 4 has some general provisions about how boards and commissions operate, like quorum and attendance, and I checked out some language that came up in the draft that were just redundant general provisions, but we have substance that's really specific to this PAMP and design advisory board here in section 2. So as I said, a lot of this is basically language directly from the advisory group. They had, I guess, a majority that favored certain language and a minority, and they deferred on like 3 points. And I'm not sure I can remember exactly what those are, but if someone wants to point them out, feel free to ask to speak to it. So a subsection A is just the purpose and sort of sets up what will guide the process and the advisory board's function. And B is the membership, and this has 5 voting members. And so there were actually a couple of versions tossed around, and this is the version, though, that the Port User Advisory Group preferred to have. So I did want to note it's a little unusual to have the department head or director that the board is advising to also be on the advisory board, but they wanted that, and it's here in 1A at the top of page 3. And then we have members selected by the mayor and the 2 major port tenants, Matson and Tout, and the petroleum user nominated by the Port of Alaska Users Group. So the meetings and procedures are laid out here, basically giving the advisory board autonomy to decide their schedule and giving them entitlement to regular reports from the port on projects and updates, setting out a few simple procedural rules. The purpose and duties here on the basis of design, I think this is the most substantive provision here. And I'm no engineer, so this probably makes more sense to the engineers here today than to me. But this basically sets out some triggers for when the advisory board is pulled in to review some basis of design documents and changes to them. Are we going okay so far?
Yes, please continue.
Okay, sure. Next, we have when the PAMP design advisory board is finished this review, they make a recommendation, or if it's not recommended, any member, actually, I'm sorry, if there's a minority, you know, it's not unanimous recommendation, then the minority can also transmit to the mayor a minority report. So the mayor gets the first look, the administration gets the basis of design document recommendations, and the recommendations from the advisory board, and the administration has 60 days. They need to, in 60 days or less, then submit the basis of design document to the assembly for review and approval. And so I think this is pretty significant. It's a new process where the assembly has a little more involvement in guiding the direction of the design criteria for the Port of Alaska Modernization Program. Let's see. And also based on recommendations from the administration and this advisory group and the port itself and its contractors. So, and I think that's about all I need to cover.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gates. When a note for Weddleton, All right, so I think with that and not seeing anyone in the queue, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the port users in any, not in any particular order, but if any of the port users would like to add their input, we'd like to hear that. Mr. Reuter?
Yes, Mr. Rivera, this is Tom Ritter.
Excuse me, Mr. Ritter, go ahead.
My question is where is this current document that we're looking at available in hard copy or electronic copy other than just being on the screen?
Thank you, Mr. Ritter. So this document is available on the municipal website. If you go to the assembly page and you look up the meetings, you will find the agenda for the July 28th meeting. Or excuse me, not July 28th, going backwards in time. The upcoming meeting that we have on August 11th. And you will find this, what's the item number? It's item 14J. So if you look up that agenda, item 14J, you'll be able to download the document.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Dreyfus? We can't hear you, Mr. Dreyfus.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I just wanted to thank everyone for the communication and the collaboration that took place on putting this together. And the Port Users Group is supportive of this version.
Thank you. Just double checking if we have any other raised hands. I'm not seeing any, so just going to send one more invitation if any other port users would like to provide their input. Otherwise, I'll ask if any other assembly members have questions. But if we're done early, that's great. Mr. Falsey?
If we're wrapping up early, I'll steal 1 more minute for an off-topic item, just as a way of preview what's going to happen for the rest of the year for the Port of Alaska. We're trying to mock up a schedule that would really get us to have our ducks pretty well completely in a row by the end of this year, meaning we have a real strong sense of what we want to build on the cargo side and what it's going to take to pay for that. So we haven't shopped around that more refined roadmap to the main user yet, but we're going to do that in short order, and then we'll come back to the assembly so that we're all seeing that. It does involve a charrette this year, but I think it's eminently achievable. So while we are watching the petroleum cement terminal come into reality and then watching this advisory commission come into existence, there's still going to be a lot of effort and a lot of movement on the port cargo side, and I think the train will keep on moving. So that's just by way of preview.
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to give one last opportunity for folks to get in the queue or raise your hands. Okay, not seeing any, then thanks everyone for joining us today. Looking forward to taking action on this on the 11th. I will see the members here again at 11:10. This work session is adjourned.